Intimacy and sex is a part of marriage. Just because it might be a challenge for you doesn't mean you get the option to not work on it. You got to keep trying. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. All right, you should know that song. Today, we are talking about the importance of sex in marriage from a Christian perspective. All right. Now, depending on how you were raised, this is a very touchy topic across the board, right? I could spend a lot of time on this, but we're just going to talk a little bit about this today because I want you to ask yourself, do I have to have sex with my husband? Do you? And the answer is yes. Yes, you do. Yes, you have to. Now, I understand this is a loaded question. It's a whole bunch that may be going through your mind right now. The triggers of why you can't. That's all he want from you. You be tired. You got all these other things. I get it. I'm not taking away from none of that because all of that is very real and all of that is very valid. But it doesn't mean that you don't have to have sex. It doesn't mean that you could just tap out of it. It doesn't mean it's okay to have a sexless Christian marriage. That should not be. Because if we as believers, as women and daughters of God, if we believe in God, if we have a biblical worldview, we've gotten married based on Christian principles, then we understand that God is the one that created it. He is the one. Now, I also know the challenges. I could speak for myself. That's not something we're really taught as women within the church where those open conversations are had of what this looks like. How do you navigate this? The importance of it. You hear more of it from societal and cultural norms and things we hear from the world where the lack of knowledge and it not being taught from a Christian perspective has caused a lot of challenges and things you have to work through mentally when you get into your marriage, but you got to keep working on it. If God is the creator of sex, right? If that's our view, then us women as Christians, we should be the ones that people are learning from. But again, that's just my personal opinion. That's my view. And I'm not saying this like I just got it all together. But I'm just saying this is something that we have to continually work on, okay? Because it is a part of God's plan. It's a part of his creation. He created our bodies with the erogenous zones, with all the different things for pleasure. I know we weren't taught that. We were just taught, I know for me, it was taught you stay away, you don't have sex until you get married. And the things that I put into my head to stop myself from just being all out there in the world or in sin or in fornication before I got married, it didn't go away just because I got married. I didn't know that that was going to happen like that. But it didn't go away just because I got married. So it's something I have to continually work on. It's something I continually have to go in my subconscious and do the work and get to the root of the issues, having those conversations with my husband to express what I want, what you want, the whole nine yards. But here's the reality. We got to have sex, ladies. And it shouldn't be grudgingly. It shouldn't be from an obligation because I'm a wife now. I'm doing it. It's supposed to be pleasurable for both you and your husband. Okay, so when we look at this, understanding God's design for marriage and sex, we know that God wants us to become one flesh. Genesis 2:24 talks about that. A man shall leave his wife and leave his mother, and cleave to his wife, right? And they should become one flesh. Okay. Sex was supposed to be an essential aspect of marriage for intimacy and unity. I'm going to read 1 Corinthians chapter 7, 3-5, so that you can hear it from the Bible. I'm not making this up. The husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband. In the same way, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but yields it to his wife. Do not deprive each other, except perhaps by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer. Then come together again so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. The Bible talks about it, talks about the importance. So you can't have the narrative, well, you can, but it's not biblical. If you go months, weeks, or whatever the case it is without having sex with your husband and then say, well, he should know better. He shouldn't be tempted. He shouldn't go do something. Yeah, there is a part of self-control we all are supposed to have, but you also got a part to play in this. We have a part to play in it. So if having sex is a challenge for you right now in your marriage, the thought of it just makes you cringe. Okay, let's do the work and work through it. If you desire to work through it, if you desire to want to get better at it just for yourself, because that's pleasing to God, because you know that God wants us as wives to be there sexually for our husband, then you keep working on it. You keep figuring it out. It may take years upon years. It took me years. I'm working on it, figuring it out, getting to the root of my problems or whatever psychological blocks that are there, okay? Because that's a real thing, but you can't quit. So when we look at sex, there are physical and emotional benefits of sex in marriage, especially emotionally. Think about it. Think about the last time that you had like good, just intimacy, sex, like the whole 9 yards, and how it made you and your husband feel like on one accord. Like it just, you can feel the difference, right? In the house, how y'all joking with each other and whatever the case it is, because it's about bringing you together. And yes, we hear different things. We got to be careful with where we getting our knowledge from when it comes to this topic, like what belief systems and patterns are we listening to. But yes, we do hear about how men are wired differently and women are wired differently. But do you think that's by accident though? God created us. So in my mind, having challenges or whatever the case with the intimacy area, my thought process is, okay, God, I believe you created me for this, man. So let me figure out what I need to and vice versa. Let's learn how to have honest communication with one another, to talk about our desires, our wants, our needs, that part where we're learning one another, but don't quit. If you want God to give you revelation, if you really want this area to be fixed so that sex is pleasing to you, you really can go to God and ask him about it, right? Like you can. You can ask them to put the right people in place, the right counselors, the right books, and everything else that are out there. But there are emotional benefits of that intimacy of becoming one. Sex helps become one, brings you together. Okay. Now, when we look at the physical, let's look at it just in the natural sense, because this is how amazing that our God was. Okay. And science didn't make this up. God made this up. So when he thought about sex, it's good for exercise and cardiovascular health. Okay. It can be a form of moderate exercise, which can burn calories. It can improve cardiovascular health and increase blood circulation throughout the body. Blood circulation is very important. The more and more you learn about how things need to flow in your body, you need that. God created sex to help you with that. It boosts your immune system. Regular sexual activity has been linked to a stronger immune system. It can increase the production of antibodies, which help fight off infections and illnesses. Next, it can be a pain relief. This is sex. This is how amazing God was when he thought about this, right? Sexual activity releases endorphins and other feel-good hormones, which can act as natural painkillers. This can help alleviate headaches, menstrual cramps, and other types of pain. So you can keep saying your headache is a reason why you can't have sex. It can improve your sleep. You having problems going to sleep? Have some more sex with your husband. I mean, I know it's easier said than done. I'm saying it lightly and joking because I know it's more to it. But think about it. It can improve your sleep. The release of oxytocin, I think I said that all wrong. Oxytocin and other hormones during sex can promote relaxation and help induce better sleep. Many people report feeling more rested after engaging in sexual activity. If you've had sex, you know very well it can help relax you even more. Stress reduction. There's so many benefits. It can help release stress by triggering certain hormones. It can lower blood pressure. It can improve bladder control because using strong pelvic floor muscles, important for bladder control and hormonal balance. That's just a list of some things. So when God created this sex, God created it. I need you to look at it from that standpoint. I understand the world has perverted it, and maybe your husband, and maybe you have. Maybe you've had some experience that has thrown you off in regards to what sex is supposed to look like with your husband, and vice versa. Your husband has, and you're trying to keep up with his history and what he's had in the past and comparing yourself. But we've got to get to that place to understanding that God created this, and he created it for multiple benefits for both man and woman. Okay. Now, one of the things that one of the challenges, I guess you could say, or misconceptions that people have as far as with Christian marriages and sex within those Christian marriages is there are communication barriers. You have to have honest communication with your spouse about this topic. Even if it's something to say, baby, I don't know what I want. Baby, I get nervous. Baby, I shut down. Baby, I get scared. Baby, I think I'm not good enough. Baby, I don't know how to talk to you about this. I don't know how to initiate. I don't feel comfortable with this. I don't know how to do this. Can we talk about it? Having that conversation with him. Hey, what do you really want? What's a realistic, you know, compromise for even how often? How do we figure this out? When you don't like what he's doing, okay, how do we find the words to tell him? Communication is the biggest thing that you can do in starting to build that rapport with your husband if you don't already talk about it. What are the desires? Okay? What are they? There's so many challenges that have come up with sex within marriages, especially Christian marriages and all marriages. Whether it's pornography, whether it's the desires of what the other person wants, but when do you guys actually sit and talk about it? Honest communication with each other to talk about what the other person desires, what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, but finding that compromise, because having no sex is not a healthy compromise if this is a Christian marriage. If you are a daughter of God and you live by a biblical worldview, we should not, I'm going to say this, give up on trying to make it work or give up on trying to have fulfilling sexual encounters with our husbands, because it's a part of marriage, because God created it. That's his formula. The world didn't create that formula. God created the formula. Okay? Another challenge that has, because of the lack of communication, maybe you have your own guilt, maybe you have your own shame based on your past experiences or not having much experience. Again, still talk about it. I know for myself, one of my biggest challenges was coming into my marriage and even getting to where we wanted to be sexually is the thought process that I was taught growing up. You don't have sex before you get married. So the things that I kind of put in my mind to what I thought was, well, how I want to say, what I thought was ways of just controlling my hormones and before marriage, some of the things that I said to myself were not the most fruitful. Right? So subconscious, or if I say something like, man, you're not supposed to do this, you can't have sex, you're not supposed to do this, you're not supposed to do this. These are things I told myself when I should have said, no, Kelly, it's okay to have this desire, but you're supposed to have this for your husband. Okay, so how do we find a way to have self-control? But instead of me saying it the other way, like, no, don't do this. No, you don't do this. If you do this, because, it's what we were taught, you're going to hell, or this, that, and everything else, or you're going to be a hoe, or all those different things, or whatever the case it is. But those things subconsciously impacted me, and it did not go away. So I had to learn how to rewire my brain when it came to that, because I had a negative connotation, because I was just trying to stop myself from fornicating per se, So that is one of the challenges that we have, because there's a lack of communication and conversation, honestly, about this topic. But the reality of it is, if you want to be better in that area, if that is a goal of yours, you can still get there. No matter what you weren't taught, no matter what your experience was, no matter what your husband's past experience is, but what do you want? The whole purpose of this episode today is to encourage you to at least to keep trying. Yes, it's going to be frustrating. Yes, it may take a long time. Yes, you're busy. Yes, you're tired, but it is needed. And have a desire to ask God to not do it out of obligation. Say, God, allow me to willfully want to be with my husband. Those are the conversations. God, help me. What is the blocks? Why does the thought of him throw me off? And and be completely honest, if you're sitting here thinking about other people, why you're doing it, or you're still thinking about past experiences and it's stopping you from your current one, we got to get away with that thought process too. You got to work through that. Because whether you say it or not, as we all know, the biggest sex organ is your brain. So if your mind is everywhere else, or you've got things that you're just not saying to your husband because you don't want to hurt his feelings, or you're not being really honest, be honest with yourself at least. Have that conversation with God and say, yo, God, this is where I'm struggling. This is the disconnect for me. Help me rewire my thought process. Help me forget certain things I need to forget, because I want to have my eyes and focus on making a good relationship with my husband. Okay? Okay? We got to get to the root of the issues. That is how we overcome these challenges. Because let's be honest, if you say all the time, okay, my husband don't help, I got to do this, I got to do that. That's a real thing for a lot of us, especially of us that have children. If your husband was to get you a nanny, right? I want you to think about it. If your husband was to get you a nanny and a cook and somebody to clean, you ain't have to do nothing, right? Unless you just chose to, right? Or maybe you just want to be with the kids, whatever your thing is, or you just want to cook. That one thing that takes up your most time. What if he did it himself, or he paid for somebody to do it? Would that instantly get you ready? Be honest. Because if you know, like, nah, maybe not, because there really is other things That's where you got to think, what is the root of the issue? Got it? We hear it all the time. Women are crock pots, this whole 9 yard. That's cool. But what if your husband starts doing all those things? He's talking. He does the candle. He does the massages. He does all these other things. Is that really enough? If it is enough for you, then perfect. But you've got to ask yourself and be honest with yourself, because are you giving your husband this finish line and then it keeps moving every time he does try? He does try. For me, I had to get to the point like that physical intimacy, that is my husband's like love language. I can't change that. That may be your husband's love language. They need that oneness with you. They need that connection with you. You may not need it. I don't always need it, right? Because that's not how I necessarily feel love. That's not a part of my love language. And physical touch is not my love language at all, right? So, but if that's his, it's my job as a wife to even have a desire to want to be able to meet his love language to make him feel loved. One thing I do like is physical touch is hugs. He can give me a hug and it just makes me feel like the best. So I began to have to equate what a hug does for me is what sex does for him. Right? If you like the gifts, if you like words of affirmation, those things that make you feel amazing, if sex is that thing for your husband, then sex is that thing for your husband. Who are you to say no or to withhold it? All right. Yep. It's something to think about. I gave you a whole lot to think about right there, but I need you to think about it. But we need to honor God through sexual intimacy. Okay. There's mutual respect, love, and commitment within the sexual aspect of our relationship with our husbands and within our husbands. Okay. Remember, think about it. Get to the root of the issues. Let's make a challenge to not have a sexless marriage. Say right now you're not having sex that often. Maybe your husband wants it 4 or 5 times a week. That may not be realistic at all to you, but where's the compromise? Have you tried the schedules? Have you tried the different things? Have you tried times of just being intimate that doesn't necessarily lead to sex? But whatever it is, keep trying. There are ideas. There's things out there. But please don't settle for a sexless marriage because it's hard. Don't settle with not being intimate with your husband because it does something for you and it makes you feel some kind of way. Let's do the work. Let's strengthen our marriages as wives and do whatever we need to do internally. And maybe you are a wife and you could be watching this and that's not an issue for you, but yet your husband is the one where it's becoming more of a challenge. Pray for him. Talk to him. Have that conversation. This is one of the main ways where infidelity and other people begin to whisper in your ear and you're looking at stuff and you're reading different stuff. And before you know it, you're getting further and further away from your spouse because these other seeds are being planted. I need you to guard your eyes, your ears, where you're around, other people that you're around, and try to keep your focus on your husband. It's till death do us part. I don't care if it's been 10 years and you're still working on it. 15 years, 2 years, however long it is, we're going to work on it until death do us part because that's the vow that we made. Don't give up. No more sexless marriages. If you're only having it once every other month right now, let's try to go to at least every month. Put some little goals in place. Let's do something and not do it grudgingly. Okay? Remember, understand God's design for marriage and sex, the physical and emotional benefits of having sex in your marriage, overcoming the challenges and the misconceptions and the root issues and the things that are hindering you, and let's honor God. But at the end of the day, Christians, wives, and husbands, we need to be having sex. We need to be intimate with one another. It's a part of becoming one. It's not just raunchy, okay? It's a part of becoming one. So do your work. Think about it, pray about it, talk to your husband about it, let him know you're thinking, that you're trying to find different ways, have that open dialogue, okay? So until next time, continue to pursue her, being heroic, empowered, and resilient as a wife. Take care.